What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I'm going to give you an overview of what happened with Lucid, go over some of the data points as well. I do feel like a lot of things did come out, so I want to go over everything else that came out today and what that means for Lucid. Before I get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So today it did go up 5.22%, a fair amount of volume. So 31.13 million shares were traded, 44 is the average. And so to start off on a positive note, there was one thing that did happen, and I've been covering Lucid since I think tail end of 2021. This is the very first time this has ever happened, and that is this. So you do see a sell rating, so an analyst rating, Morgan Stanley, Adam Jonas, who does have a 50% success rating, but he did give a $4 price target. This is the very first time ever Adam Jonas, which has notoriously been very negative and bearish on Lucid, this is the very first time he gives a somewhat optimistic price target, especially given that we are at $3.60. So definitely that was quite exciting. And even more so, you do see that this post right here. So it does say Adam Jonas did tell investors that the company's strategic value is likely to increase in Q4. And keep in mind, their earnings is right around the corner on the 21st, just in case you forgot. So in reality, that's very, very optimistic if you ask me, despite the actual sell rating and a $4 price target. And the general consensus is that it is more valuable than $4, but still baby steps. So this is the very first time that this has ever happened. And there was news that did come out this morning. So Lucid did actually put out some PR. And so that was this right here. So Lucid did slash some of its pricing, more so even looking at the Air Pure, it's going to be $69.9. And I believe previously it was $77, if I remember correctly. And then you have the Air Touring now at $77.9 and the Air Grand Touring at $109.9. So ultimately, there's different ways to interpret this. My initial viewpoint on this was similar to what Tesla is trying to do. They are trying to fill in the demand gap. So of course that will really raise sales, but regardless, there is a demand gap, not necessarily just with Lucid, but the broader market. So of course, that's my viewpoint. A lot of people on social media have different viewpoints and see this as a very positive thing and somehow correlate this with the price of lithium going down. I see that as very far-fetched if you ask me. Plus, there was an article that did come out as well, kind of with a similar viewpoint as myself, just potential demand, kind of a gap that needs to be filled and whatever else. So let me know your thoughts. And over and above that, as you can kind of see, it does look like they are giving 2 years scheduled maintenance included at no additional cost, and plus allowing $1,000 towards Lucid charging accessories. And I believe that their wall mount was around $1,200, unless they cut costs on that over the last little bit. So no matter what, I see this as somewhat a positive thing, but we'll just have to wait and see for their upcoming earnings to see exactly whether that is a good thing or bad thing. And surprisingly, that's not all that did come out. So as I've brought up in the past, so this was the latest data that we did have up until, I guess, December 2023, and it did show global electric car sales did increase 40% year over year. So that was phenomenal, with the exception of Europe, because that did go down 29%. But aside from Europe, though, there was a lot of demand, and that's still with a higher interest rate, higher inflation market. The latest data that just came out today did signal 69% as of January 2023, and that's once again on a global EV sales viewpoint. So a lot of demand across the board. So Lucid is definitely hitting all the necessary marks, with the exception of China, but hopefully sooner rather than later, maybe mid-decade, that is where they'll be able to really expand potentially to China. What's your viewpoints on that in the comments below? But aside from all of that, though, it has been a couple days since I have gone over the top questions that retail is going to be posing to management. And so ultimately, there hasn't really been any changes. The top three are still being very much heavily voted on. I'm not really necessarily that big of a fan. I would really like to see other types of questions more suited towards, I guess, ESS, possible partnerships, but people seem to be very much oriented towards and kind of hell-bent on answering and asking these questions. So looks like those will be the 3 questions that is posed. If they do extend more so and ask maybe a 4th or 5th question. Number 4 is, when do you think you'll have your first profitable quarter? That one I see is just comical. I don't even know why people are asking that. And then this one, I think, like, surprisingly enough, last quarter, I think, was almost the very first quarter that we did not ask or pose that question regarding Apple. So it looks like it's back on the table. Question number 5, is there any updates regarding future partnerships with Apple? So, you know what? Might as well throw that out there. Who cares? The rest of the questions aren't necessarily the best, in my opinion, but still, it is what it is. One question that I would really like to have asked, even though I think it's too far-fetched to pose a question and have it actually answered right now, but logistically, what are they doing with that railroad? I believe they were asked beginning of Q1 2022, like way back when, and they just said that once they start to ramp up sufficiently, that's when it'll become more beneficial and they'll actually develop that. Because I actually did reach out to UP. So the main line that it connects to is the UP line. And so ultimately Lucid itself does have to bear the cost and just attach it to the UP line. And from there, then they can obviously ship and whatever else, but it just needs that initial investment, probably a couple million in my opinion. I didn't really ask, probably a couple million. I didn't really ask cost wise, but still I feel like that would be a little bit more advantageous. So who knows, maybe that question could be posed. Aside from all of that fun jazz and the new analyst rating and whatever else, I'll go over some of the data points, starting off with shorts. So shorts did increase a small amount today, so 175,000 shares. 29.83% of the free float is being shorted. 264.03 million shares overall are being shorted, and cost per hour average is 54.22%. Looking at options though, $2.39 million in calls being purchased versus 1.44 in puts. Sentiment wise, 49% of all the options being done today were optimistic and bullish. Of the call options that are being purchased, there's a consensus for it to be above $4, so more of a FOMO. PPI is coming out tomorrow. Retail sales didn't really come in line with, I guess, the original forecast, but luckily enough, jobless claims did come out better than anticipated. So that's kind of what saved the broader market a little bit today. But PPI is coming out tomorrow. So if that data is positive, then you could see potentially a touch of around $4, at least based on the options. Looking at puts, it's anticipated for it to be below 350. So the risk versus reward is definitely there with Lucid, as it has been over the last little bit. Looking right now with it closing at $3.63, it is trading between, I wouldn't really consider this R1 to be fully broken, but you'll want to watch for it to either stay above or below that going into tomorrow. So this R1 to potentially this R2, so 377, it did attempt to break out from there, didn't really have enough, so it kind of bounced off of that and consolidated. But still, with good PPI, most likely you will see this R2 retested. So as it stands, $3.43 is going to be that line in the sand, and that was obviously the low for today, roughly. So it did bounce off of both extremes. So 343 is going to be the next strong support, and then 377 is the next strong resistance. Number of retail investors have been getting into Lucid. They have been massively loving Lucid, and I think rightfully so. There's been a lot of good signals that their upcoming earnings is going to be a fairly good success, and I think this is going to be the very first time that some people might be able to say that confidently in almost like a year and a half. So it's been not necessarily the best, but like I said, I think a lot of things are developing, and largely due to the AMP2. So we have them to thank overall. Looking at stochastic, you do see it at 71, no defined trend, but if it does continue to go up a little bit more, so around that $4 range, you are going to see it being overbought. So it might need to consolidate a little bit, but we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. So let me know your thoughts on Lucid. Give yourself a shout out. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing with Lucid? And one final thing I just wanted to share with you, take advantage of this promo. Simply sign up for an account with Moomoo, throw $100 at it, you get 5 free stocks. Each stock is valued up to $2,000. Take advantage of that while you can. Link in the description below and also comments. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.